While you were away, I said we have the great principal from Verdi, and we're gonna start, because we know you're running a great school. And I do see folks like from our housing authority and our health equity officer, and so a lot great community folks. So everybody, if you can just put your name in the chat. And why don't we start? Dante, you think we have pretty much most people on right now? We could start. What do you think? I'm looking at the list of who we invited.
Maybe we can give it one more minute until 11:05 and then
Okay,
yeah.
sure.
Okay.
And if I have to leave slightly before 12, because I have a meeting with some labor folks, is a labor action happening, Robert will be well equipped to finish the meeting with Dante, just to note. Because Robert has handled North Richmond issues in our office for many years before Tanya joined us. And Tanya is still on maternity leave and will be back within a couple months. Wow, it's great. We have so many great organizations on that work with North Richmond. So this is great. I think we're probably ready. Dante, think so?
Yeah, we can start.
Great. All right. Good morning, everybody. And first, thanks all of you for all of the work you currently do, and for taking time out of that busy schedule you all have to meet on talking about youth opportunities in North Richmond. And I think you're all invited because all of you touch that space and really do work in that area and wanted to have a lot of voices here. And I'll just set a context and then say a few words and then turn it over to Dante. There's been a good amount of work done on by Healthy Contra Costas through their North Richmond Youth Listening Session and quality of life efforts to understand needs and hear from young people in North Richmond about what they would like to see. And so coming out of that discussion, we wanted to bring together many voices and individuals and organizations doing work in North Richmond to look at hearing from all of you about what we all collectively believe would better meet needs of youth in North Richmond, both and hearing from the public systems as well as residents, as well as community-based organizations. And I want to provide a little context. I've been through this process of establishing a youth center before. About 18 years ago, I started working with others to do the planning process for the RISE Youth Center. As one of the co-founders of RISE, we worked with community groups and looked at needs for young people in Richmond. And at that point, we had a site here. There's not a site. We had a site. It was a vacant county-owned building that with adjacent parcels all owned by the county. And today, RISE owns all of those sites free and clear. They have a brand new $8 million youth center. We're funding the health clinics and amazing space. It all started with a lot of community and youth planning, over 15 years ago, and it opened in 2008. So it was before then. So, Richmond's a city of 100,000 people and a very different situation than North Richmond. And even at that time, when we were talking about RISE, there was discussion about, how do we specifically meet needs of young people in North Richmond. It is a more isolated community than the city. It is much smaller. It's 5,000 people, both the city and unincorporated area. There's stuff happening there now, but there needs to be a lot more opportunity. So, and what I learned in that process, it was really about listening to youth and what they wanted, and adult allies and organizations working with them to sort of create that reality. And today it's a great model youth center. So we're at the starting point of here of understanding, what makes sense for North Richmond. Is it a new youth center? Is it building on something that already exists? Is it adding it? So really, and there is some new development that will be happening through the housing authority. As many of you know, the development of the old Los Deltas housing site. There's scattered sites that in which the county is going to be going out. The housing authority is going to be going out to take proposals on making some of those sites available basically for $1. For housing or community use. So that process will be rolling out here in the next few months. And there's some sites there. So that's a little context for that. And we're really happy to see the work going on at Urban Tilth. That land was that 3 acres was owned by the county, and we worked with them to provide some seed funding and the land. And there's a wonderful urban farm there being built for the community. So I think there's a lot of real opportunities moving forward. And so this is a good time, I think, to talk about how do we better meet needs of young people in North Richmond. And so with that background, I want to turn it over to Dante with Healthy Contra Costa, who's really been leading the youth listening sessions, and we'll have a really comprehensive presentation on work that's been done till now. And again, thank you everybody for posting your name and affiliation in the chat, and take a look at who's here.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Joya. So I just want to say before we start, I do want to encourage asking questions in the chat, just so that we save more time for fruitful, engaging conversations later. And if there are any other questions, we'll try our best to follow up through email or other one-on-ones if needed. And I do also want to highlight that today's meeting is to focus on discussing the establishment of this potential working group, as opposed to more of the logistical things and aspects. We want to focus more on visioning and things like that, and dreaming for this group. And then I would also like to highlight that Healthy Contra Costa is here to just highlight our findings from the listening sessions, and kind of just help in kicking off and supporting and kicking off this group. We don't really have any intent for coordinating services for a youth center or buying any of the specific Los Deltas sites. We simply have collected data, are in the process of continuing to share this data with the community, and it can be used for any other aspects, and hope that future developers, whoever it may be, take in these community-centered information. And we're here to bring to life and uplift some of the aspects from this listening session and the quality of life plan, which you all might be familiar with. And I would also like to acknowledge and celebrate existing efforts or past efforts related to supporting youth in North Richmond. So we have folks from the Social Progress Inc., Eleanor Thompson and her team, I believe that are Joe, Tiana, and some other folks who have worked on their one-stop youth resource center that was previously on Chesley. And then everyone from Urban Tilth that have been engaging youth in workforce development and learning about nutrition and food. And then ONS, the Safe Return Project, yes, who is here too, everybody that's here, city partners, the Department of Children and Youth, Birdie K-8, the North Mission Center for Health, and everyone here that's on this call or not. So just want to acknowledge that. And to start us off, so the North Richmond Youth Listening Sessions was identified as a kickoff activity under an early action project from the North Richmond Quality of Life Plan. If you were able to see in your emails, there was a digital version of the quality of life plan, and on page 32, under the category of youth and education, it states the following. So the objective of this category was to create unity in order to eliminate the polarizing neighborhood climate and to give youth a place to socialize and be supported. And the strategy was to establish a community youth center designed by residents and the youth to serve young people. And then for our inquiry or data collection, we collaborated with RISE on this. So the listening sessions are utilized to follow RISE's campaign, listening campaigns, which is a type of qualitative survey inquiry model, which is like a focus group. And it seeks to, in the words of RISE, understand with more sensitivity, clarity, and empathy of lived experience of young people burdened with trauma, exposure, marginalization, histories of oppression, expressions of distress, and healing emergent from individual and the collective. And the ultimate aim of these listening campaigns are to illuminate the structural conditions of inequity that create community distress and harm, and to enact priorities that and needs identified by young people to heal, restore, and thrive, and cultivate shared values, language, and strategies, as well as mutual accountability and support within and across organizations, sectors, and systems. And also this idea for a North Richmond Youth Center to provide services and unify families was inspired when the North Richmond community members and the resident leadership team did a walking tour of Richmond Village Apartments, which has a community center in the middle of the property. And they believe the community center and this new development of North Richmond would be a great way to connect with the rest of the neighborhood. And it is a critical opportunity now to discuss turning these ideas into action around the development of a youth center, given that there are many redevelopment opportunities happening in North Richmond. So I'm just going to give some high-level summaries from the presentation, since I do want to save time for discussion with you all. So if you click in the chat, you can see the whole presentation. This was presented at the North Richmond MAC to Supervisor Joya and also the Housing Authority. But I wanted to highlight that there were 5 listening sessions with about 48 to 53 youth participants. And they were conducted throughout January 2020 all the way to August 2022. And the first listening session was with Verdi K through 8th graders, which held about 24 participants, and each were incentivized with a $15 gift card. And mind you, the first 3 were virtual. So this was during COVID. And then I hopped into Healthy Richmond at the time in June and picked up some of the work. So I held 2 virtual ones, November 2021 and December 2021, which involved Helms Middle School youth. So there was 3 of them, and then 3 transitional age youth. And then as the vaccination rates for COVID increased, it was more safer to go outside. So I was able to hold 2 in-person listening sessions, one with 8th graders at Verdi K through 8. And also thanks to Safe Return Project, shout out to Carlos and Marisol, they connected with me with 3 other youth that were living in North Richmond that they also work with. And then the essence of each questions in the survey or listening sessions were: what makes you proud? How do you feel about your neighborhood? What's important to you? What's your favorite subject in school? Who do you go to support or look up to? What do you want to see in your community? And if given a building and $1 million, like, what would you want this space to look like, feel like, and or sound like? And then if you click through, I'll quickly flash our findings real quick. So if you access the link, you'll be able to see those that participated, the purpose, everything, but I want to get at our findings. So these are some of the findings related to what makes them prideful. Generally, they like that older children looked out for younger kids. They felt unity. They like the community center, which they were referring to, Shields Reed. Some of them, a lot of them actually said, I don't know. And there was actually a lot of pessimism when I held some in-person of the listening sessions, feelings of expression around hate around their own community, feeling that Richmond doesn't help them out, some other things. But it's kind of similar here too, about like their feelings on the neighborhood, safety issues, exposure to people doing drugs, housing issues, things like that. And here are some of the themes related to what was important to them, some of their favorite school subjects. And I want to stress their type of support. So like they mentioned all these different aspects, which I believe represent you all too. But what was really striking to me was a lot of them actually were just like, I don't trust anybody. I'm here for myself, it speaks a lot of volume. And these are some of the themes that they want to see. And I feel like I've seen you all in different spaces in our action teams related to education equity, health equity, economic justice. And I feel like all of these things that youth want are here. And I see many of you resonating to each of these. I'm just going to stop sharing. Okay. So, and then I would also like to emphasize our findings do align and expand with the City of Richmond's Department of Children and Youth's 2020 Community Needs Assessment. And they did similar things with focus groups, interviews, surveys, forums with high school aged youth, and some parents and some providers. And they also looked at different reports and secondary data resources. And from that, they created a strategic investment plan in all 6 priority areas, which are support for behavioral health, mental health, and wellness, provide education support and employment training, out of school time, after school, sports and enrichment programs, youth violence prevention, access to basic needs, and information guidance and case management all resonate with our findings. And I would also like to emphasize that, there is probably data that you all have or maybe have directly heard that resonate with what is being talked about or expands upon what youth are experiencing. But I think even having that conversation today or later might be important in providing more insight on the need for a youth center. So yeah, I do encourage you all to kind of just read through the slides after this. And there was like also different interest in other things related to like food justice, life skills trainings, basically everything. And I also do encourage looking through the quotes of the youth. I think they speak a lot of volume. And I also want to emphasize not only were the words captured, but I think somewhere in the notes of the comprehensive analysis that I did was like also the body language of youth. Like some were very just feeling loss of hope and that hate, which was really striking to me. So yeah, and I'm gonna shift over to describing like a potential discussion for today. So as I mentioned earlier, we want to establish like some sort of like working group focused on collaborating, brainstorming, or thought partnership and planning for a potential North Richmond Youth Center. And to start us off, I drafted some language that you might be able to build off of or create something new. But as an idea to start us off, I wrote down like this youth center would be a place for North Richmond youth to experience social cohesion, belonging, to receive direct services, social emotional health and well-being types of services, workforce development, educational resources, etc., and to build community. And I do want to invite you all just to like brainstorm together either in the chat or feel free to unmute to expand upon this vision and for this working group. So yeah, I'll pause there and open up the floor.
And one thing I was just going to say is, one thing I think we learned through the whole Rise Center process is that everything doesn't happen for young people at one youth center, that the youth center can be a gateway to other services, other resources, and other things happening in the community. So it's not meant to be the only place things happen. It can fill gaps of what's out there and be a venue, but be a gateway to the other work that's going on in a community. And I think that's something that we heard a lot from young people, that they don't necessarily want one place for everything, but they want a gateway to other opportunities. So maybe some initial thoughts. And again, the idea today isn't to sort of come up with a solution, but to sort of have the work that Dante and others have done sort of be highlighted here, and to hear from all of you, and maybe put a working group together that would this is a pathway, right? It's a journey to look at this further. Yeah, Eleanor.
Oh, okay, what you all saying is right. What Dante said, everything he said, we've heard that for years on what they need. Health programs, programs for homeless youth. Everything he said is correct. And we've heard it for years, but we just haven't had the avenue or the funds to have what they really need out in North Richmond. So it's all correct.
Great. And I know I want to acknowledge the places that are currently serving young people, and you can, and some of you can offer more about the mix on this. Of course, we have Verde Elementary, Verde K-8, no longer Verde Elementary. So, right, pretty much most youth in K-8 are at that location during the day. Of course, when you're 9th through 12th grade, you know, North Richmond youth are at one of the local high schools outside of North Richmond. So Verde, and then I know there is the center for the county's health center. CHDC has various facilities, Urban Tilth, of course, the Housing Authority. So the community-based organizations like Eleanor and others. I know Yes serves young people in North Richmond. So maybe hearing from others who are doing work, just your thoughts and reaction to this. And one question I will just put out there to the principal, to Eric at Verde, is anything you may want to add about thinking about how we would approach this and what young people want, because right, young people K-8, they're at your school during the day. And so what thoughts do you have as well? And how to add value in the after school hours, right? After school, evenings, weekends.
Great, thanks for the opportunity to be here and for the presentation so far. You know, our after school program serves around 60 to 100 students, but the enrollment can vary widely. Of course, we have our Shields Read representatives on this call, and they can speak to their own enrollment. In regards to the Verde offering, you know, our after school program is over around 5:30 p.m., 6 p.m. at the latest, and there is no opportunity after that. We have a pretty marked difference in enrollment. Certainly, we attract a lot of 1st through 5th and even 6th graders. Much harder to interest our 7th and 8th graders to come to our particular program. Shields Read might have different luck, different success there. But I certainly have seen just a glaring need, especially with our middle school students, for a place to go, to convene, to feel safe, and to be themselves, essentially. And I could speak, you know, anecdotally about some issues that have certainly arisen in the past years that have resulted in our youth, you know, unfortunately getting involved in discipline process and with the law, with the legal authorities. And I think it's mainly out of just trying to have a space to, you know, exist outside of school, after school, but not in their house. And unfortunately, there wasn't really a great offering within, you know, the geography for them. And I really think a lot about those students and some of the pathways that ultimately were gone down. And I do think that an offering like this, especially geared toward our adolescents, our middle school age, high school age, of course, I think would be a game changer. So I'm excited the conversation has begun. And again, those are just the offerings that we do have here at the site. And of course, all of that goes away in summer and holidays, right? So there's all those gaps that we'd love to see filled in, a wonderful, caring, safe space for all of our kids to go to whenever they're not here with us, of course.
Yeah. And before I turn to Aaron, I did want to acknowledge, I know, yes, Shields Reed is right, even though it's on the city side, it serves all of North Richmond youth and in Park and Rec, and I'll get to maybe Troy in a second. Aaron, you had your hand up?
Yes, I've been here, Shields Reed for over 10 years. And one of the things that I have across, if we are available, if we have the funds or anything, one of the things that we have missed in the North Richmond community, it's an indoor basketball court. If we have one out here, everybody, everywhere you go, you will find a basketball court indoor. We don't have that. So pretty much we're stuck indoors when it rains, depending the weather, but I think that'll be a big help in that community.
You're just and just your site that you currently have, that indoor site, that court is not usable, or can it take with an additional, and I know we don't want to get into too many details, but an additional investment of dollars, would it make your indoor court more usable?
For that, I don't have an answer for that. Maybe Troy is with us. Troy could tell you on that, but I didn't hear about anything about indoor basketball court. Everything is outdoors.
Right.
I do know that we've been wanting or requesting an stage. Usually we have to request a Chevron to borrow their stage for any program that we're gonna have outdoors. In this case, I know that there's gonna be a stage from that budget, but I didn't hear anything about an indoor basketball court.
Oh, so our little social hall is really not made for sports. The lights hang down, so, and the roof is not tall enough. So if somebody threw a basketball up and hit a light, glass would come falling down. But all the team, as you know, you mentioned that the kids out here are isolated from the other neighborhoods, especially when they get to be the teenagers and they're targeted. So we have lights on our outside court, but that really doesn't help the kids during the winter time and the rainy days.
Right.
I was going to piggyback on what Eric said. Ever since they started taking 7th and 8th graders, we've increased our age limit from 12 all the way to 14, 15. And so we've been taking middle school kids, but I think because we have a lot of younger kids, we're mostly kindergarten to 6th grade. I think they don't always feel comfortable. They want to be with their own group. They're young developing preteens and teens. So this would be a great collaboration. And what we can do, and what we've traditionally always done, is we hire a lot of teens through summer works. And then we just got a grant from the Department of Children and Youth to take on more middle school kids in our summer programs. So any way we can help collaborate, but I do think that age does need a space of their own, and we can be a resource for them to come and get jobs and volunteer and learn different skills like that. And even if somebody wants to take the ball and start organizing these teens and preteens, we have space at Shields Reed until there's a facility built. But like I said, they need their own space. They need like maybe a coffee time, or their own homework time and stuff like that. So I'll put that out to you, any of you community groups out there. If you have somebody who's really good with teens and you looking for your own space, we do have space here at Shields Reed until something's built in the future.
Thanks. And let me ask, Don Gilmore is on, and I know Don, Community Housing Development Corporation has now sort of, been based in North Richmond for many decades, and with the, unfortunate closure of Neighborhood House a few years ago, you're sort of one of the longest standing CBOs out there and do, run the senior center now. And have had a lot of various engaged, your board members live in the community, many of them, and had community processes. I mean, so as you listen to this presentation, the goals, the needs, what do you, how would you go forward on thinking about a work group to address this, knowing, a lot of the other things that are happening and things that need to still happen?
Well, thanks, John. I think I would want to try to figure out, based on RISE, their financing components that went into make it feasible, and what other financing components might be there or available. Putting that together with some form of a budget, basically, to look at a goal of what we have to do to raise the resources to get there, and then look for different avenues to address any potential funding mechanism to get there. I think we kind of have the idea of what we need, but the big issue has always been resources to be able to put it together. Working groups make sense as we go through that process, but that component is very important into making us get to an end goal. And, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but, first we start out with, I think we got a good example with RISE. So we know what it takes, and we know there's some escalation in construction costs and things of that nature, but that would be a good start. And then identifying those different revenue streams, or maybe even creating one, whatever. I mean, I think there's opportunities for that, but I think that's the big issue.
Yeah, no, I think, and just in a couple comments about that, and one of the things we realized with RISE, it was a very incremental process. And I think, like when we were first starting, we went to visit Youth Uprisings in Oakland, which was built in a old small Safeway store, totally remodeled it into a huge youth center. Of course, remember, we are talking a different scale of community size here, right? North Richmond, the catchment area is much smaller, right, than larger Richmond. But and we were very realistic about saying, well, here's, we had a 2,700 square foot vacant county building. We had some county funding, foundation funding, and that was the start. And it wasn't until now, we're 15 years out, that this brand new center, state of the art, much bigger center on much more property happened. So I think that's something that we realize is that, what's the short-term vision? What's the long-term vision? And it grew incrementally, and that, the money to get capital, right, very different than the money to support operations. And like a lot of the initial operations were supported by foundations or contracts with the county health department, frankly, to mental health services with young people, and then a range of other kinds of funding sources. So, yeah, I mean, I think just separating out capital from operations and thinking about it that way is something, and also, how to take the work that's currently going on and leverage that. But yes, funding is key, location is key. In the short term, there are some of these scattered sites that are going to be available, and maybe Tony, who has his hands up, can talk about that. And it's possible that one of the scattered sites could become available, that we could use as a venue. Is that large enough? That's part of the issue, but they will be available for free, basically, except there's going to be a cost to, one needs capital cost to upgrade it and turn it into something. And then where should it be? How does it link to what's already going on? So I don't know, Tony, do you want to, I see you have your hand. I do remember, and I will say this, and this is my own bias. When we started RISE, we decided it would be set up, after listening to community, as a separate community-based organization. And I think that was a very good decision. It wasn't run by the city or the county. even though it had lots of support from the county. To be clear, I don't think it didn't really get any support from the city. I think there was some CDBG funds, but the housing authority had like a housing authority run center. And this is not meant to be critical of the housing authority. And I think Tony knows what I'm going to say, that was at one of the locations at the housing authority, but it didn't, I don't think it didn't have the same innovation flexibility that a nonprofit has. So I definitely always come down on the side that these kinds of things should be a community-based organization, whoever does it, whether it's new or an existing organization. And because the housing authority, in trying to do its best, it didn't, many reasons it didn't survive, right, Tony? And I think I said at the time, the bureaucracy of government can prevent some innovation on these types of things. So saying that,
Right.
Tony.
Thanks, John.
You tried hard. It was great. Let me just say.
Well, it didn't help when
isn't as flexible, right?
Right. And it didn't really help when HUD started underfunding and actually cutting the funding for resident services, and it really kind of left us out in the lurch. So a couple things. The scattered sites, unless you grab 3 to 4 and you kind of expand the footprint, I don't think the footprint of a duplex is large enough to do what we hope to accomplish here. But the other piece of this as well is that we're getting ready to release an RFP for the main campus, and not to say that it's going to end up there, but there is going to be part of that RFP is going to be a request that the developers have some creative community benefits in their proposals. And we're going to specifically put language in there about what some of those things could be, like a library, or we originally were talking about a Boys and Girls Club, but it seems like that was more we don't
want to name it, because we don't want to pre-select who we're right. We want a local, right.
So we're gonna, the whole idea is to let people be creative. You tell us what you want to do, and then based on what you're telling us, we're going to score it and select accordingly. And then it becomes a discussion, right, about how you're going to do this, where is it going to be, what do you have in place to, lock down a location, that kind of thing. So there'll be further discussions about that. I know there's some county land that is vacant in the area. Maybe that's a discussion that we partner in with. So there's a number of things. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, and by the way, this RFP for the main campus, we're talking about conservatively 8-10 years of process to get where we need to be, right? But I was speaking to the Director of Youth Services for the County Office of Education yesterday, Alejandra Chamberlain, and she mentioned that they're looking to create a number of youth centers throughout the county. Specifically, her drive is with East County. She lives out that way, but also, I mentioned to her specifically this group, and whether she'd be interested in sitting at this table, kind of working with us, and she's very excited about that. They're going after Measure X dollars.
Well, let me tell you, I can tell you about that. The county board has already allocated some capital and ongoing funding to 1 or 2 youth centers in East County, and I think sort of understanding the model that RISE has, they've done an RFQ process to identify who would facilitate that process. And I think RISE has submitted a proposal for that, not to run a youth center there, but because they've successfully worked through a process in Richmond, that I think they may be one of the applicants to facilitate that process in East County, where there is no center. And so that is a Measure X county funded process. And so there will be some entity selected to lead the facilitation to work with the communities out there. So yeah, that's what's going on there.
Yeah, so, there's going to be some opportunities coming up here for us to get something, going, preferably sooner than later. I think whatever the county is doing through Measure X is going to be probably a little faster than anything that was going to happen on the main campus, just because, we're talking about roughly a $200 million project on the main campus. So people are going to need time to go get the funding, apply for different resources, like tax credits and state HCD dollars to actually do the work. So, but here's the main point of all this is that it's happening and it's getting ready to launch. So, these discussions are critical in terms of getting us to a place where we're going to craft a request for proposal that incorporates what the community wants to see in the neighborhood.
So let me turn to Eleanor, and I know we want to sort of, I think, really identify getting who here wants to be involved on a working group. I think that's what we want to get to, because we're not going to decide these things here. I appreciate the Department of Children and Youth is here. And just to note, I mean, RISE really helped lead the campaign because I was involved in the tax measure to form in both the charter amendment to form the Office of Children and Youth, and to get the transfer tax passed, right? Increased transfer tax on properties over $1 million that is helping through the general fund of Richmond fund that office. And I know that both the unincorporated area of North Richmond as well as the city area are eligible for funding from the Office of Children and Youth, is my understanding. So, and I know there was a lot of hard work that went into both those campaigns. Eleanor? And I know, oh, you're muted. I want to make sure we hear from others who want to say anything before we look at identifying, make sure, Dante, we're covering everything, identifying how we move forward. And I mean, this is really meant to get everybody together to sort of hear this discussion and say, who wants to roll up their sleeves and really be committed to looking at, what is the location? How do we do fronting? How do we build on what's happening? What is it? So, yeah, Eleanor?
Okay, I wanted to say that we're located in Men and Women of Valor office down on the city side, but what it is, it's not really a good space for the children and youth because she works with adults, and it's kind of hard mixing the children when adults are coming in. So that's why we was pushing to get a space, and I'm hearing from Tony that now we might be able to get a scatter site. We were asking for it for the resource center. So I don't know if that's in the working. And like Don said earlier, it's finance and funding that we haven't been able to get to operate our programs or to get a building. Because, I've been trying for about 15, 20 years to get one of the boarded up buildings and wasn't able to get it. So hopefully, just to ask Tony again, are we able to put in proposal for a scatter site for a resource center?
Yeah, I mean,
again,
I look, I don't want to talk about this. The purpose of this meeting is not to talk about which organization is going to apply for that, because as all of you are organizations doing work. So Tony, let's talk about that separate. I think it's more, how do we as a coalition here, come together to look at what do youth need, what does it look like, and who's willing to sort of roll up their sleeves. I see a comment by Princess, which I think is important, where she says, I wonder if we can leverage elements of the youth center, recording studio or clubs, college resources in a center we already have, like Shields Reed or the Resource Center, and upgrade our natural spaces to have outdoor activities. Also, maybe we can bring back Richmond Build. So I think these are all the kind of things to talk about is, part of it is asset mapping. It seems, Dante, I know you talked to a lot of folks. One of the first steps is understanding what's already going on in North Richmond, both from a location standpoint and an operational standpoint. Where is it? What's happening there? You know, there's also places outside of North Richmond that young adults or high school students go to. How is that relevant here? Like a North Richmond resident, maybe, you know, 18-year-old in high school, maybe going to Rise, or maybe going to PAL, or maybe going to somewhere else. How does that relate to what we want to do in North Richmond? What's the age group we need to focus on? I think all of these are things that take further discussion. And I know, so I should ask, yeah, and Don says a short-term site. Yeah. I mean, I think we want to respect the work that's going on and say we're not here to create something that displaces what the good work is, but how do we sort of add to that? And is it one location, and how can we help on that one location? So who, maybe Dante, is it too premature here to ask? Really, it seems next steps. Who should be who's willing, and maybe you know, you can note it in the chat, and Robert can keep track of it. Who's willing to be on a working group, and what role do you want to play in that working group? And then we could focus some more detailed discussion on these issues. So I'll say that. Dante, what further do you want to add on that?
Yeah, I think given the time, like for those here right now in the chat, like say like maybe I'm interested in future meetings. We haven't established like frequency around these meetings yet, but just expressing your personal interest. And then also maybe stating those that you think CBO wise or personal connections that you know that should be at the table, whether it be a resident, CBO, whoever else that might provide more insight. I think that'd be important. And also identifying if you're interested in being like a co-lead to this group. As we move forward, as you all know, we moved from Healthy Richmond to Healthy Contra Costa, and we're going to be focusing on more county-wide efforts. And we'll still serve as like a thought partner throughout this process. But as I mentioned, we're kind of here to like share the data, kick this off, and support you all. So I just want to add that.
I have to go to another meeting, so Robert's going to close up for me. And so it's really about now understanding how each want to participate. And I think this has been really a good opening discussion, and just having all of you here. And even if you choose not to, doesn't mean you're not part of the asset mapping of deciding, you know, what's already happening. And maybe that's something we can assist Dante with, and helping with the asset mapping that's going on in North Richmond. So with that, Robert, I'm going to hand it off to you. And Dante, I just want to acknowledge Dante and Healthy Contra Costa that has really done a great job of sort of bringing people together to help hold this. But, you know, we can now expand it to more, and we'd love to have ongoing participation by others. And I know, Tony, while you have to maintain an arm's length process on the RFP, I don't think you need an arm's length process on just what needs are, because a lot of families that have kids who are in the housing authority, and so having that involvement and input is important.
Yeah, that's why there's a fine line I have to walk in all this, and when I start seeing proposals, then it's like, wait a minute, I got to leave the room, kind of thing. But I'm certainly available to be part of a technical assistance team, or just kind of talking out issues.
Okay.
Thank you so much, John.
All right, I'll
take it from here.
I'll leave it to you and Dante.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Folks, this has been a great meeting so far. We're not going to get all the answers. We're not even going to be able to come up with exact next steps, but we do have the interest from each of you, and we've gotten some good feedback so far. The communication will continue. Right now, I want to open it up again, make sure this space is open. Not that many of us have really spoken. We don't have a lot of time. Are there others who have some ideas they wish to share?
Could you add me to the list, Robert, Dante, please, for the workshops?
Yes, Eleanor.
Thank you.
I see Raphael's hand is up. Raphael, go ahead.
Yes, I want to know, going forward, how will these meetings be implemented? Are we going to be given like specific times where talk to individually where we're all available, or is the times already set in place going forward?
No, nothing is set in place. We will reach out. The conversation will continue.
Okay, thank you.
Any others? Something occurred to me, Kalu and others at CHDC, I know you're running programs that are new. And maybe there are needs that are overlapped here, or maybe there are ideas that you may have for how we can enhance what it is that you're doing along that Fred Jackson corridor that looks so beautiful. Kalu, I want to make sure there's space for you if there's anything you want to share on that.
Yeah, the resource center that we opened up last year, we're just kind of really getting some programs brought in. We're trying to right now, trying to get a media training workshop, and we're trying to get a silk screening workshop brought in. So we're looking for the funding for that. Also, we're working with Way to Love. She's going to start having a couple of meetings down there along with LEAP to try to, figure out what we can do for some of the unhoused and what we're doing down there. So, I mean, we have a lot of little programs that are starting to come together. We're trying to set up a parenting program for our parents also from Verde, working with Martha through that. So really trying to attract the youth, though. We're trying to figure out, what do the youth need is one of the questions. Trying to make sure that we bring things that they are attracted to, like maybe music, a media program, things of that nature that they may be attracted to, because the older kids are the ones that we're trying to kind of grasp to, because a lot of times they're afraid to walk in these kind of buildings. As far as the, Shields Reed, they may not go because there's not a sports gym to use, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And things like that nature. So we just looking for different avenues that we want to partner with all the groups around to try to figure out what we can do to help the youth. So
thank you so much, Kalu. I'm really delighted that you brought that in. I think a lot of folks weren't aware of that, including myself, not with much detail. But you're talking about music, media programs you're offering in a beautiful new space. That's the kind of thing that can be really appealing to this audience of teens and adolescents that we're talking about. And where is it that you're hosting this? What's that address? Are you muted, Kalu?
So yeah, 1540 Fred Jackson Way, but we're trying to find the funding right now because we got a partner that we're trying to partner with. They already have the programs rolling in Oakland, and they want to bring it out to Richmond. So we're just looking for the funding for that piece.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you so much for bringing that to everybody's attention. That's an important resource and idea that we need to be cognizant of as we're thinking about the future here. Others, anyone else who hasn't spoken yet? I want to make sure we open the space. We have very little time, but we want to hear more. Anybody else?
I see that Lashara, you have your hand up, and also I want to acknowledge the other partners.
Oh yes, Lashara.
Like I see Safe Return Project team is here, Cooperation Richmond, Urban Till, SOS Richmond, I think ES replied, Hope Latifa, thank you. And then I think
so there's so many here. Thank you so much for being here. Lashara, please.
Thank you. Sorry if my background's a little loud. We're like getting our carpets cleaned and stuff. So, but hello everyone. My name is Lashare. I work with the Family Justice Center as the program coordinator. I would like to be interested in any upcoming like working groups to think on how we can better serve our youth population. We also are looking for ways to be more active and supportive in these efforts or these conversations, being that we support the city of Richmond, Contra Costa, families that are affected by interpersonal violence. We see a lot of our families who have children that go to Verdi, who have, seniors that live in the senior center down in North Richmond. So we're really trying to really connect more with that side. We don't see a whole lot, but we feel like our services, we know our services are super needed. So I know I heard someone say that they are having like parenting groups, and we host things like that. We have a summer camp that's coming up. I did send a message to, I think, Troy, to see if we can like come and work with Shields Rees. We're also doing like a food giveaway. So we're trying to find places that we can come on a maybe consistent basis, where we can actually like share our resources and connect and partner. And I did like someone else's comment, which was to see what's already there and try to use that for now, and like maybe use that as a working base. I've been in the city of Richmond pretty much all my life. My family has a church in North Richmond. It's called New Hope Baptist Church. So I'm 321 Alamo. I've been in Richmond for a long time. So I've seen the change of the community. And as we're discovering like the needs, I think the needs are like the same. Like kids need a place that's safe. They need a place that is welcoming. They need a place that is full of space, that isn't crammed, and of course filled with people who want to actually work with them, in places that are consistent. Kids are not going to come anywhere if it's not consistent. Same with adults, right? We're not going to go somewhere that's like here or there, half this, don't have supplies for that. So that's really what they need. They need consistency, and a lot of these working groups I've been a part, I know we have great intentions, but it seems sometimes to feel like it's taking forever just to do one thing, and that's just to start, like to
Thank
really
you.
put things in motion. But some people I will be connecting with and sending you some messages. But yes, we're most definitely would love to be a part of the process.
Thank you so much, Lashara. Angelica.
Hi, everyone. Really quickly, Angelica Delgado with Yes Nature to Neighborhoods. I also just want to echo everything that was shared by everyone else in the space. I want to share that with Yes, we do have an adult leadership pathway that we offer, and specifically our Trees program is coordinated by Michelle, who's also on this call, and Rafael, who is our ambassador and alumni from this program. And I just want to share that with our work in the Trees program, we found that even among young adults, 18 to 26, there is a very important need for more services that support them, specifically an interest in more holistic mental health services that support the trauma that young adults experience in our community. So we are very interested in being a part of this working group and see how we can all collaborate together to offer these services for young adults in the North Richmond community as well. So thank you.
Tremendous. Thank you so much. We are over time. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you all so much. Your presence and your passion are really valued. Dante and I and others, we will debrief. We'll get our data together, and we'll reach out to you again in the coming weeks about when we can reconvene and how we can continue to work together as we try to actualize a vision that's really helpful in North Richmond. Thank you all so much. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
And until next time.
Bye.